Hey, Mitchell here with Running Coalescence, and today we have a request from Scott. Can you do a video about the correct way to breathe when running? Great question, Logan. Uh, I know you're probably seeking for an answer of a breathing pattern, and this is one thing that you'll see all over social media talking about breathing patterns. And in truth, I feel this misses the bigger picture by a long shot of what's going on with breathing. Some people will have I've known of some three kind of phase breathing patterns. I know some other people that have done four. Myself, simply put, I tie it in with my cadence of my feet. So if you kind of picture my hands for a second, I'll kind of do a breathe in, exhale, exhale. And it's like, well, why am I doing that like that? Well, one thing that you'll kind of realize when you're running, when you're stepping, you are going to have kind of a jerking on your body in your diaphragm. So as weird as this sounds, when I breathe like that on the inhale, I can actually kind of like let loose my diaphragm and let my body kind of pull it open on its own. So I actually don't have to like pull for that little bit of a time. So it's like I'm opening up my diaphragm, I let my stomach kind of pull my diaphragm open, and then I pull it again. And then I just do one exhale over the next two steps. So that's my preferred one to do. Now, as you pick up the cadence, as I pick up the cadence, I do that more and more and more faster, but I just keep it with the feet cadence to kind of keep coordination of the body in whole, so the arms and the legs and everything are all kind of moving together. And so that's going to be the simple answer you'll see out there on the internet. Okay? Here's a breathing pattern that I do. Here's one that you can do. Here's one that, but a lot of them, it comes down to personal preference. The bigger question is, that isn't asked very much, are the types of breathing that we do. So right now, you and I, we're not doing anything strenuous. We're just doing normal breathing. Just normal inhale, normal exhale. Okay? Well, when you are just sitting around, when you're walking, jogging, or trotting, it's pretty easy just to have this normal breathing pattern that we are doing. When we're jogging, we do tend to pick it up, but I would say, because jogging, it can be a pace that you can maintain depending on how good you are for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours jogging. Well, this whole time that you are jogging, you are not, excuse me, you are not breathing really, really heavy for air. You're kind of cruising. You can still have a conversation with someone next to you. One thing that I usually do when I'm in this phase is I will be lip singing or singing verbally while I'm jogging. And that kind of lets me know how much is my body really struggling to pull in air. There is a heavy breathing. Now, when we're running, like if we're in a race, a 5K race, cross-country race, it's very hard to hold a conversation. We are just, so, I mean, going back to the breathing pattern, we'd be like, we'd have a much higher rate of breathing, okay? So, heavy breathing, normal breathing, and heavy breathing. Then if you're going to do a full-out sprint, and I want you to keep in mind, sprinting is our natural, pretty much fight or flight system. We are not meant to be very efficient at it. It is literally meant to be, give it all you got, get away from this predator, because if you don't, you are going to die. Do whatever it takes to get away, give it everything you have. And your body will usually sacrifice form, sacrifice breathing efficiency, just to give it that burst of power to get away. Even to the point of, hey, you may pull some ligaments and tendons and get hurt, but hey, at least you got away. Then the other alternative is, hey, you may pull some ligaments and tendons, but that animal is going to catch you, so you're going to be dead anyway. You know, yeah, you got massively injured. So that's how our body looks at injury when it comes to literally us tapping into full out sprinting to get away. And it's like, well, name a scenario in nature where we would have to actively move like that. Because our hunting pattern was not that fast. We literally just did, it was called progressive hunting, where we just jogged and ran and eventually just wore out animals. And this is before we had bows and arrows and spears, knives, and all this. Once we got that, we kind of became lazy. But, so progressive hunting was not really a sprinting at all. The only time that we'd actually have sprinting is if something is about to come after us and kill us. What I'm trying to say about the sprinting side is it's a terrible place to learn how to have a better breathing pattern. Very, very bad. It's a very bad place to train to improve your capillaries in your lungs. It's a very bad place to train the strength of your diaphragm as well. This is a lot better, in my opinion, to do when you are doing heavy breathing, more of a running style or a higher jogging style, to where you can kind of spit out some words, but you know, just right on that edge. But doing it in that sprinting phase is very hard to learn how to become efficient, because your body is just going, give it all I got to get out of the situation. That's really all that your body is trying to focus on. But when you're running, that's not the case. It's not in that panicky state as much. So that's a quick breakdown of the 3 types of breathing patterns and where it's, in my opinion, terrible to run, where it's, to train in for breathing, heavy breathing where it's a lot better, and then just normal breathing or just upper normal breathing where we kind of are jogging. So there is something that I think is very interesting when it comes to breathing that there is not a lot of literature on. And this is when you'd be doing intervals for the 400 meter. If you train a certain way, like the way that I do, I have a insanely fast heart rate recovery after doing intervals. Let it be my 100, 200, 400. I have a very, very fast heart rate recovery. So it drops down to from 180, 160 down to 130 really rapidly. But when I'm done, my breathing pattern is still quite high and chaotic. The best way to break this down that I've been able to explain is, as you're in more of the core of the body, there's a lot more blood flow. There's a lot more oxygen. And your arms aren't really doing as much when you're running. Yes, they're a counterbalance, but pretty much you have your core, your arms, your head, they have an adequate amount of oxygen. So in a way, they're sending a nerve signal saying, hey, we don't need as much blood, heart rate slow down. But you just ran intervals and your heart rate's really, really high. Well, I mean, not your breathing is really, really high. So you kind of have like your one part of your body being relaxed because it didn't consume a lot of oxygen. And hey, if it takes in more oxygen, you're actually going to start getting lightheaded. So your body actually changes from one type of breathing, a heavy breathing, to a shallow breathing where it's not taking in as much oxygen. And the best way to explain shallow breathing is when you're spending more emphasis on the exhale than the inhale and holding. So it's just more time on the exhale. And it's called shallow breathing, okay? Well, on 400s, you will kind of have the heavy breathing. I will have the heavy breathing on the 100, 200, and then the 300 is kind of, it changes in there. But then the 400, I'm almost always on a shallow breathing. It's like my body has all of the oxygen that it needs. Now it wants to focus more on extracting the carbon out of the system. And the part that I see that's really interesting as far as the heart rate is, you can get a meter just like this, and it will tell you what your heart rate is and how much oxygen you have. Well, when I get done with my 100s or 400s, I put this on right away. And my oxygen is still at 98% oxygen. But then my heart rate just bottoms out to 130 and it's fine. But I'm still sitting there because my legs are going, we need air, we need air. But then when you kind of look, when I have literally looked at my heart rate and gone, I'm fine. It's my legs that don't have the oxygen. And then almost immediately, my heavy breathing stops or gets reduced just because I can visually see my heart rate is not spiking out of control. But what's happening is literally the rest of the body is going, you are okay, we don't need the air, but the legs are still screaming for oxygen. There is some things to look into as far as the heart size and blood vessel size. Now, when it comes to the heart size, distance runners usually have a much better heart, a pump. But sprinters usually have much better blood vessels because every single blood vessel has to feed so many cells. And the bigger that the muscles are in that area, the more blood would be needed to feed, oxygenate those cells. So, but the thing is, a lot of sprinters do not work on their cardio as much. So what we have is sprinters with big blood vessels and terrible pumps, hearts, and we have distance runners that have great pumps but terrible blood vessels. Well, balance runners, which are kind of more in the middle, they train their heart to be very strong like a distance runner, but then also have the better advantage blood vessels of the sprinter. And this is where you see more of a balance between these two talents. And it's really funny because that explanation that I just gave, it's not really explained that much in detail in any of the medical books that I have read to be a trainer, when I was studying massage therapy, when I was studying to become a medical database person. It was never explained like that. Guess where I got that analogy from of having, okay, so here's the end view. A pump, a big strong pump with small piping. Very bad because that pump is going to be overworking and it will overheat. Other way around, you have big piping and a small pump. Well, it's not going to be able to move around that stuff either. Guess who gave the analogy of you want to have a pump that is built for a certain size piping? A plumber. And as I've talked to more and more plumbers on this, they go, yeah, they actually have ways to calculate if you have tubing that is this big, you need to have a pump that is this big or can move this much. And that relation between the two is common with plumbers, and it's not talked about in the medical terminology at all. And I just find that insanely interesting that they actually can look at a system and go, this one needs a bigger pump, this one could get by with a smaller pump, these pipes have to be increased in size because they're doing this. And pretty much one thing also keep in mind is like as blood vessels are more in the core, they're bigger, but then as they spread out, they usually tend to get smaller, okay? Unless there's a lot of muscle that they have to feed, they usually retain their size longer. That's why some of the biggest blood vessels are directly in the middle of the body and then in the upper part of the legs. So it's just muscle size, direct relation to blood vessel size. But distance runners do not have massive leg muscles, so they do not have these massive blood vessels. How to get better at your breathing. And that's the real kicker, I think, is what can you do to get your breathing stronger? Okay? The first thing that I did when I was in high school that I noticed was swimming. Not the swimming with, and swimming and then doing the head to the side or any of that, but relaxing, kind of finding my center, and then taking a few breaths, kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Big inhale, go underwater, and go as far as I could. Not as fast as I could, but as far as I could on that breath. What happens is this: you will start to have a tendency to return to the surface for air. Well, what happens over time, one, your breathing, your capillaries will increase in your lungs. Two, sorry, my cat was outside and the neighbor's dog kind of startled her and got her scared, so I had to let her in. So taking a deep breath and then going as far as I could on that breath. So you're not trying to go fast, you're just trying to maximize the air and the distance that you're going. Well, this improves the size of your capillaries, but this also, what you'll notice is you're going to feel the need to return to the surface for air. And eventually, you're going to start to kind of fight and suppress that feeling more and more and go, body, you're okay. You're okay. And there's that tendency of panic, of breathing heavily, that we need air, starts to become less and less, and I was able to go more and more and more longer underwater with a single breath. At my maximum, I was able to go, so not there and back, but that 1, back 2, there 3, and then back 4. I was able to do this in a, I don't know the size of the pool, but I was able to do this like 3 or 4 times, and it was probably a pool that was over 100 feet long pretty easily. But that's the kicker, is that need to feel a breath and come to the surface. Learning how to teach the body not to panic like that. Now, how I believe that helped me was when I was sprinting, that same kind of panic feeling of breathing for air exists when you're in a all-out sprint. So it allowed me to kind of keep more control of my breathing pattern and what I was doing overall physically with my body, because I was giving my body a taste of doing this with swimming underwater. There is another way that I thought about how people could do this, and I've done this a few times with actually a pretty good improvement. If you don't have a pool, what I've also done was go to the track and do the same inhaling, breathing, take a few breaths, and then one big one. And with a breath, it's not a question on how fast you go, but how far you can go. Just walking on the track with a single breath. And that seemed to have a lot of the same advantages of swimming underwater for me. And it's like, well, it's safer than doing it underwater. To me, I mean, it makes more sense because you can take a breath anywhere on the track, but you're just taking a single breath, you're trying to stay calm, and you're trying to go. But again, you're going to feel that need to breathe, panicky kind of sensation come in. And over time, you kind of teach your body and your nerve system, know you are okay, know you are okay, know you are okay. And it starts to become less and less, and you're naturally able to go further and further. But this also, your body is becoming more used to a higher carbon ratio in your blood. So when it starts to experience that, it does not panic as much. That's just one way to kind of look at it. There's meditation. This is going to sound a little bizarre, but martial arts, I learned how to meditate very, very well. And one of the funnest, weirdest exercises that I ever did was I would just sit down and I would just feel my body. And then it's like, okay, there's my arm, there's my leg. And I would actually picture the blood vessels reducing in size in my arm. And then sure enough, eventually my arm would start getting tingly, it would turn a slight blue, and I was actually meditating, controlling, restricting the blood circulation. I know this is more about breathing and But that's just the power of one of the things that you can do with meditation. And I was never able to do it with 2 arms at once, but I could do it with 1 arm at a time. But it was just kind of one of those things of practice meditation, mind over matter, controlling your body. It's like the more kind of things that you do like this, even though it's not directly related to the breathing, it's like, well, but being used to being able to control your body like this mentally, it will kind of help transfer out from one discipline to another discipline. The last one, and this one's probably the easiest one and the most convenient one. When you're out jogging, and I think I said it already, I usually will either lip sing or I will sing with the music I'm listening to. Well, this allows you to still push, but there's a lot of times you will think you're approaching that I need to do heavy breathing or I need to do panic breathing, and you're like, no, we're okay, we're okay. Calm down, body, you're okay. So I will lip sing a lot in my longer runs, and I'll admit it's easier for me to do this for runs that are an hour plus than it is for a 30-minute run, because the breathing pattern is going to be way more intense, and it's hard to have a conversation with that higher rate of breathing. But when it's a more normal breathing, maybe it's a higher rate of normal breathing, jogging wise, which we can do for a lot more time, that's where it's easier. So I want to thank you for asking this question, because but I just wanted to give you more than just the basic breathing pattern, because you need to find one that works for you. And there are a few other patterns that I do, but they're more like a situational thing. And a lot of them I don't even remember until I'm in that situation. But the more important thing when it comes to the kind of a lip singing or day kind of zoning out, our nerve system has a good idea on how to do a lot of this stuff on its own. And we usually tend to overthink our stride, our form, how much we're moving our arms, how little we're moving our arms, how much we're breathing. We tend to overthink this, and sometimes it's just good when we're just on a cruise to let our body just take over an autopilot. And I had one of these moments a few days ago when I was thinking about this video, and a perfect example was I was at one point, and then I just started to thinking about something I was going to mention in this video, and then the next thing I knew, I was about 1.5 miles down the road. But my body was just on autopilot, and there's only one thing that I remembered in that whole 1.5 mile break, and that was when I hit a certain intersection. There was some guy that just blasted on the gas and took off and startled me. But that was the only thing that I remembered in that whole gap, besides what I was kind of recalling that I was going to put in this video. But the thing is, was I focusing on my breathing? No, my body was on autopilot, just doing it. I don't remember my breathing for that time. But that was just me doing a high jog, a normal, I would say normal high breathing, not a heavy breathing. And sometimes that's just the way to go, is let your body kind of take things over and figure things out, and then just be aware of what your body is doing at that time. And then when you bring it to the next level, you're just more aware and more conscious of what your body is trying to do. A lot of times I apply this to form as well, is how long can I maintain this form? Oh man, now these muscles are too weak to do this. Well, my body's shifted to this form now. Well, what can I do to strengthen that form that I just lost? And time again, it's more of that internal monologue with yourself that will allow you to improve form, breathing, power, nutrition, hydration, sleeping patterns. I can't tell you how many times I do a run, I get drained, and my body just goes, I need a 30-minute nap. I need an hour nap. And I'm like, no, if I sleep now, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. But I kind of, in the back of my head, somewhere it says, don't worry, take this nap. It's not going to be long. You will fall asleep fine. And it's like, okay, then I just give in and I do it. And sure enough, I don't have a hard time sleeping at nighttime, but I needed to have that quick power nap. That internal monologue is going to be the biggest key more than anything that on a pattern is what are you feeling? But look into some of these exercises. So I want to thank you, Logan, for asking the question, and I do hope I kind of answered it. And if you're looking for more of a thing on pattern, I do feel that's what you're going to find easily. So hopefully giving kind of a example of more what's happening with the body and how we're reacting and what our body is kind of feeling and when and where at certain levels. And that's the big thing is the different levels that we need to do these breathing patterns. It's kind of like how they always say we need to run on the balls of our feet. Well, running is the sport we do, not the form that we are doing at that given time. We literally have walk, trot, jog, run, sprint, skip, and prance. And people are like, trot, skip, and prance? Like, yep. We walk, we go a little bit faster, we trot, kind of shuffling our feet. Then we do a full-out jog. Eventually we shift, we can shift to skipping or to running. And the differences between those is hip movement. That's it. Skipping would be more of a vertical like this, and running, well, we don't want to lock in our hips depending on how hard we're going into running. But skipping, picturing like if you need to cross a rocky area where there's boulders or where there's uneven ground, potholes, you would literally go more, side to side, kind of a skipping motion. Well, that's where you do it naturally. And then there's running, which we all are familiar of, and sprinting, which we're very, very familiar of. But prancing, all animals have prancing. Ours is more on a straightaway, but it uses a combination of our hips rotating forward and backward, and then adding that horizontal up and down. So our hips are moving more at a 45-degree angle, and it's like a really powerful boom, and it looks really like you're gliding more than anything. And I've had a lot of people tell me that it looks like I'm just gliding. So I forget what I'm even trying to say, but like these forms are sorry, I just completely lost my track of mind, Logan. Oh yeah, but so there are different forms that we do and different muscles that we use. So saying when you always need to run on the balls of your feet when you run, well, when you're jogging you aren't. When you're walking and trotting you aren't. When you're skipping you kind of are, kind of aren't, depends. But when you're running and sprinting you're on the balls of your feet. So we hear people say run on the balls of your feet, but what about when we're running, doing the sport, but we aren't running as a form? Should you be on the balls of your feet? No. Okay, here's breathing patterns to do, but are you doing that breathing pattern when you're jogging? A lot of times, no. Are you going to be able to focus or improve that breathing pattern when you're sprinting? No. But it's like, well, here's a breathing pattern that they say to do. Well, when? Well, when you're running, and then, well, how hard? Because you can run lightly and you don't need to do it, and then you can run heavy and then you need to do it. So just something to kind of keep in mind as far as the range is concerned there with when they give advice is what form are they talking about? How much effort are they talking about? And that's where we don't hear a lot of answers from. So that's where you kind of have to have the wider range of spectrum of what's going on. But thank you for the question, and I do appreciate it. Hey, if you guys liked my channel, make sure to like, comment, ask more questions, subscribe, tell your friends about it, your teammates, your coaches, share this video, help me beat those pesky algorithms out there, and I will have another video for you available in a few days, and in the meantime, you guys take care.